Hi, my name is Petros Khachaturian. I'm a first-year computer engineering major from UC Santa Barbara.
Hi, my name is Adam Juratanian. I go to UCSB and I'm a third-year political science student.
Hi, I'm Danny Monkaryan. I'm a first year student at UCSB and I'm a chemical engineering major.
Hi, I'm Shah Mirzayans. I'm a third year political science major student at UCSB.
Hi, my name is Atina Manvelian. I'm a sophomore at UCSB. I'm majoring in physical anthropology and psychology, and I'm a first generation American Armenian.
My name is Ellen Oganessian. I'm a third year political science major at the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Hello, my name is Astrid Kakopian. I am a sophomore biochem major here at the University of California of Santa Barbara, and I am a first generation Armenian American.
Hi, my name is Rosanna Chumaikian, and I am a second year communications major at UCSB.
Hi, my name is Liana Kardavukian. I'm a third year and I'm a comm major at UCSB.
Hi, my name is Harut Sarkisian. I'm a third year at UCSB. I'm a communication major and an LGBTQ minor.
Hi, my name is Melanie Brusalian. I'm a first year religious studies major here at UCSB, and my great-grandparents were victims of the Armenian Genocide.
Hello, my name is Sophia Armin. I'm a third year global studies and feminist studies double major. And yes, I am the great-granddaughter of an Armenian genocide survivor.
I believe it's important to separate government from civilians because the government really does control most of what we know, especially in other countries in the world. The internet access is limited, education in the school system is controlled or limited, especially in the Turkish government. No one is allowed to say anything that goes against the Turkish government because it would mean certain jail time. So certainly the Armenian genocide would never be discussed in public, let alone in the school system. So the people of Turkey do not know, are ignorant of this subject. So I can't blame them. Although I have met Turkish people who have, once they found out I was Armenian, have apologized for what their ancestors did. And this I appreciate.
But I understand when they're saying that we are sort of insulting their nationalism, but honestly, I don't see it as justified. I can see someone's point of view but not agree with it. They're completely wrong. We're not saying the Republic of Turkey is responsible for the genocide. We are saying the previous leaders of what the country was, because it wasn't Turkey, it was the Ottoman Empire beforehand. So we're not trying to insult the Turkish Republic. We're not trying to, we just want justice for what was done, and I think there's a consensus with historians all around the world that it was actually a genocide.
The Turkish government, I urge you and I demand it as someone who is a family member of survivors, that you acknowledge my family's experience, and especially this country as well. Obama said he would recognize the Armenian genocide, and it has not happened, and we will hold him to that. So
That they definitely need to accept the Armenian genocide. It is something that happened, and you know what? They wiped out 1.5 million Armenians, and to do such a tragical thing and then not take ownership over it and not even, you did it. That's fine. It's not fine, but you did it, and you're not gonna kind of take charge over it. That's what gets to me. And the whole law about how they can't even talk, Turkish people can't even talk about the Armenian genocide in Turkey, having people be restrained in their thoughts, it seems to me like it's not letting them flow, not letting them say what they need to know, what happened, so we can prevent it from happening to other, people.
Well, the current Turkish government is just all weird circle for me right now. I can't blame the youth in Turkey because they don't know what the Armenian genocide is, because it's not in any of their books in school, so they can't even learn about it. and they can't even talk about it even if they did know, because it's illegal to talk about the Armenian genocide in Turkey. And I blame the Turkish government because they chose not to teach the kids, because they chose not to put it in their books. But I also can't blame them because they didn't live during the times of the Armenian genocide, and that's why it's all weird circle for me.
They're ignorant, and like, you know, if something happens in favor of like the Armenian race, they always try to get in the middle to stop it. Like, for example, like Montebello, the monument, you know, it took so much work to try to get that stationed up, and like they interfered. There's so many threats. I think recently, in the past 2 months or something, you know, they basically always threaten us whenever we try to excel, and they threaten America if they recognize genocide. So obviously, like, they're still to blame, not directly for the killings, but the fact that they're not accepting, like they're denying the Armenian genocide.
I think the Turkish government is being ridiculous about their current standpoints. I think the US and Europe are currently wrapped around Turkey's finger because of all the politics and arms and the base that Turkey provides for the war in Afghanistan. And so until we break Europe and the US break those ties, we're stuck. There's the French bill, and Sarkozy's really trying to get genocide recognition for that, and the Turks are putting it down. And so, but at the same time, it's the Turkish government behind it. I don't blame the Turkish people at all. I mean, they grow up not knowing what the genocide is or what happened, and so you can't blame them. But I mean, it's our job as survivors of the genocide to make sure and educate other people about what our families went through, and that genocide in general is just not okay, and that hopefully by our talking about what happened, the Turkish government will see that we are taking a stand and we're not going to back down. In 3 years, I think it's going to be the 100th anniversary, and so we're just going to keep fighting and fighting, and they are not going to be able to get rid of us.
So, my name is Sofia Raquel Armen. My middle name, Raquel, comes from my mother's side. My mother's grandmother was named Raquel, and she was very young but married to a wonderful husband during the genocide, and she had a daughter named Lucy. And Raquel was and her family was forced out of their homes during the genocide by Turkish soldiers, and they were forced to march in the desert. They went on those death marches through the desert, and as they were marching, many of the Turkish soldiers kept, trying to mess with the crowd, and they would consistently just go up and, terrorize, many of these ultimately refugees who had had all of their belongings stolen and who were just being forced to march to their own death. And Raquel, kind of the most inspiring story for me, and which is really the reason why my parents named me Raquel, is because Raquel was very young and she had a daughter, and she carried her daughter all the way on all of these, on this long trek. And at one point, her daughter Lucy started crying like a lot, because it was a very stressful situation. They were essentially running for their lives. And when Lucy started crying, the other Armenians in the caravan were getting very angry, because they were saying, quiet, quiet, the Turkish soldiers are going to find us, you're going to be bringing attention to us and they're going to kill us. So the other Armenians actually, pressured Raquel, and Raquel ended up leaving Lucy behind, because they were literally about to all be shot and killed. That's the reality. And so she left Lucy behind a rock, and she was heartbroken, and the caravan moved on. But basically, Raquel's heart beckoned to her, and she just didn't care what anyone else said. And ultimately, she went back behind the rock and picked up my great aunt. And my great aunt, actually, speaking of the 100th year, the 100th year is coming, and that is so unbelievably disturbing, even that we live in a country that refuses to recognize a very real history, especially for many of its citizens. And my Auntie Lucy actually just passed away last year, and she is a genocide survivor, and she had to go her entire life with a country, this country, and the Turkish government, not even recognizing her own experience, which
It didn't affect my family directly, but I do remember an interesting story from a random man that I met. I was in a department store about to purchase a pair of shoes, and as I handed my credit card over, the man took a look at my name and said, "Hakopian, are you Armenian? Or do you speak Armenian?" And I said, "Yes, I am Armenian. Why do you ask?" He says, "I'm Turkish." I said, "Well, that's great." And he said, "But my great-grandmother was Armenian." And I said, "That's interesting. How did that happen? Or do you have a story?" And he went right into telling me about his great-grandmother, who was from the village of Erzurum. She lived in this Armenian village where the Turkish soldiers came through. They came through one day and sort of piled most of the villagers into the church that they built there and set the church on fire, killing them. The rest of the villagers were thrown into the river and drowned. The little girl somehow managed to play dead on top of the pile of bodies in the river, and she waited there until the Turkish soldiers moved through the village and left. A Turkish man passing through the village saw her moving in the river, found her, and took her into his home. He raised the little girl until she was old enough to marry his son. And that's where that man that I met at the department store is from. His great-grandmother was Armenian, but he is, I guess, predominantly Turkish. And here's this Turkish man telling me that the gendarmes, the Turkish gendarmes, did annihilate an entire village. They didn't move them to Syria, they didn't take them on a death march or a march to somewhere else, they didn't deport them, they deliberately annihilated them.
I first learned about the Armenian genocide in 3rd grade when we had an art project to do our family tree. And I took the project home to my parents, and I was super excited to get it started, and I later found out that I couldn't go over 2 branches because my great-grandparents had been brutally murdered during the Armenian genocide, and my parents hadn't really told me the story until I was much older. I was visiting Armenia in 2007, and I went to my great-grandfather's house, Serov Demircan. He lived in Ararat, and he had a book that he wrote down all his experiences from the genocide, and his one mission in life, the only reason of his survival was to have these stories be told. He didn't want it all to just go away with him dying. So what he did is everything he went through, he wrote it down, and he passed that on in our family. And my mom is currently translating into English for me because I don't read and write well in Armenian. But basically, when he was 4 years old, he thinks he was 4 years old, he's not even sure when his birthday was, his family was told that the Ottoman Turks were approaching their village, so they were told to flee towards the inner cities, and as they were fleeing, they were caught by the Turks on horsemen, and they all tried to hide, but his little brother was crying because he was a baby, I'm not sure how old, and they found him, and then as the parents were trying to protect their child, they were all brutally murdered. His father was beheaded right in front of him, his mother was sliced up like an animal, and he witnessed all this, and I guess from the shock he wasn't able to make any noise, so he just sat there in silence watching his family just desecrate in front of him.
Well, it affected my grandmother's side of the family because at the time of the annihilation, my grandmother's grandfather had a Turkish neighbor who helped them get away, and they disguised my grandmother's dad, who was 14 at the time, as a Turkish girl, and they were forced into hiding, and during this time they were not provided with food nor water, and at times they were forced to eat grass, and eventually my grandmother's grandfather, he passed away, and my grandmother's dad luckily survived with his 2 sisters.
My great grandparents, they did witness portions of it, and it completely changed our culture, my family's culture, because our family was run out of Armenia. So they were forced to be raised in countries like Lebanon or Syria or Greece, which is completely foreign to them. So that completely adjusts the way they're brought up, and you kind of lose your ethnicity in that. So the way it's just pretty much led down to me, and it's been passed down to me. And if the Armenian genocide had not occurred, and if my family had stayed in Armenia and been raised that way and continued that way, even though that they had moved back after a few decades, it would have been completely changed. The way I grew up would have been completely different. Though everything I've noticed, everything I learned, I might be living in Armenia.
What I think about the Armenian genocide is that I wish it never happened, and I think it's very immoral, and I still to this day don't understand how much a group of people can have hate towards others.
I think the Armenian genocide is one of the biggest tragedies that ever occurred in history, not just because of the sheer fact that there was 1.5 million deaths, but the fact that the Turkish government denies this event from ever occurring.
I think that it's a tragic event that happened in 1915, and definitely you see a lot of hate that's evident through all the acts that occurred. It's just so devastating.
Well, I think it was an immoral act against a non-assuming, non-threatening group of people that were coexisting with another group of people perfectly fine until politics and government stepped in, and it kind of went downhill from
When I think of the Armenian genocide, I just think of the horrendous crime that was committed. I mean, it's just so unnatural for human beings to be systematically killing so many other human beings. I don't know. You have to have a sort of really dehumanizing propaganda to really convince someone that somebody else is not worth living, and an entire group of people is not worth living anymore.
I think every Armenian who especially is young, and everyone Armenian in our generation today should be an activist. I think it's our responsibility to spread awareness about the genocide, whether it's through a share on Facebook or through marching on April 24th at the Genocide Commemoration March. Anything really that we do to spread awareness and inform people, just to make sure that this doesn't happen again to different countries and different cultures. So I really think it's our job to spread awareness.
I think the Armenian genocide is one of the darkest events in history, mostly because it seems like history has skipped a period, and history is so important to what we are today and our foundation and how we move forward. The Armenian genocide, for me, of course, personally, I am Armenian. It has affected my ancestors. Many of our generations were killed over almost a century ago. But it's such an important event that took place, and it's not fair that so many things should be recognized and one event shouldn't be. It's the fact that this did happen, and you move forward accepting it. It's just accept part of history. You shouldn't rewrite history. It's just write it the way it was. And I feel that the Armenian genocide was not done that way. It's caused injustice to a whole race of people.
Well, I mean, it's crazy to imagine that certain people in power can decide, hey, we don't want a race to exist, and just try their best to completely annihilate them. So I think it's completely wrong.
The genocide was intentional, and their intentions were to wipe off all Armenians off the face of the planet. And I don't understand how the human race is capable of such cruelty. And even though we are nearing the 100th year mark, we will never forget the Armenian genocide. We will never forget what they did to us. And I honestly could never forgive them.